Have you ever heard a sound so terrifying it freezes the blood in your veins? Imagine 1,000 of those sounds, a symphony of screams and snapping jaws echoing through a pitch-black swamp. This isn't a scene from a horror movie. It's the story of the Battle of Ramri Island, an event so gruesome it's listed in the Guinness Book of World Records for the greatest disasters suffered from animals. In early 1945, the Second World War was reaching its bloody conclusion. On a remote island off the coast of Burma, now Myanmar, British forces were locked in a desperate struggle to dislodge a garrison of about 1,000 elite Japanese soldiers. The fighting was fierce, a brutal back and forth for control of this strategic piece of land. But the Japanese were outgunned and outnumbered. Pushed back from their strongholds, they faced a grim choice: surrender to the enemy or retreat. They chose retreat. Their escape route was a 10-mile journey through a dense, impenetrable mangrove swamp. A decision that would lead them not to safety, but into a living nightmare. As the Japanese soldiers plunged into the murky water, the jungle itself seemed to turn against them. The air grew thick and heavy, buzzing with clouds of mosquitoes carrying malaria and dengue fever. Venomous snakes and scorpions lurked in the tangled roots and overhead branches. The mud was like quicksand, sucking men down, exhausting their already dwindling strength. Dehydration set in under the oppressive heat. Wounded soldiers, separated from their comrades in the darkness, cried out in vain. But the worst was yet to come. The British forces, positioned at the edge of the swamp, heard scattered rifle shots throughout the night, followed by bone-chilling screams. Screams that were abruptly cut short. The soldiers weren't just fighting the elements. They had entered the kingdom of one of Earth's most ancient and efficient predators. The swamp was home to a massive population of saltwater crocodiles, some of the largest and most aggressive reptiles in the world. As night fell on February 19, 1945, the true horror began. The crocodiles, drawn by the scent of blood from the wounded and the thrashing of men struggling in the water, began to attack. The first screams were isolated incidents, terrifying but dismissed as the sounds of battle or men succumbing to their injuries. But soon, the attacks became a coordinated frenzy. Imagine the scene: utter darkness, broken only by the flash of a desperate rifle shot. The water churns. A soldier beside you is suddenly dragged under, his screams gurgling into silence. The sound of powerful jaws clamping down, of bones snapping, echoes through the night. It's a cacophony of terror, a mass feeding event. The Japanese soldiers were trapped. To turn back meant facing British guns. To press forward meant wading deeper into the jaws of death. They fired their rifles wildly into the black water, but it was useless. They were fighting ghosts, ancient monsters rising from the depths. The swamp became a slaughterhouse. The naturalist Bruce Wright, who was with the British troops, described the scene as the most horrific he had ever witnessed. He wrote of a hellish din, a chaotic nightmare of scattered rifle fire mixed with the fada, screams of wounded men crushed in the jaws of huge reptiles. The crocodiles, in a feeding frenzy, attacked anything that moved. For the men trapped in that swamp, it was the ultimate terror. Not a quick death from a bullet, but a primal, violent end torn apart in the dark by prehistoric beasts. This night of terror became known as the Ramri Island Massacre. It's a stark reminder that sometimes the most terrifying enemy isn't human at all. The raw, primal forces of nature can be far more relentless. Stories like this, buried in the footnotes of history, show us the extreme edges of human experience, and they deserve to be remembered. When the sun rose the next morning, an eerie silence had fallen over the swamp. The water was still, its surface a placid, muddy brown, hiding the carnage that lay beneath. Of the roughly 1,000 Japanese soldiers who had entered the mangrove forest, only about 20 were found alive. They were traumatized, wounded, and utterly broken. The British forces who ventured into the swamp's edge were met with a ghastly sight. The water was thick with blood, and the area was littered with scavenged remains and abandoned equipment. Hundreds of men had vanished, consumed by the swamp and its reptilian inhabitants. The crocodiles, gorged and listless, floated like logs in the water or sunned themselves on the banks. The silent victors of a battle man was never meant to fight. For the handful of survivors, the psychological scars would be deeper and more lasting than any physical wound. They had looked into the abyss, and the abyss had looked back with cold, reptilian eyes. The story of Ramree Island is a chilling chapter in the annals of war. It strips away the strategies and politics, leaving only the raw, visceral reality of survival. It serves as a powerful, if terrifying, lesson about humanity's place in the natural world. We may build empires and wage wars with sophisticated weapons, but in certain corners of the globe, we are still just prey. The tale is so extreme that some historians have questioned the exact number of casualties, suggesting the figure might be exaggerated. But whether it was hundreds of men or dozens, the core of the story remains undisputed. A group of soldiers, trapped between an enemy army and a hostile environment, met a horrific fate. It forces us to reflect on the nature of fear itself. What is more terrifying? The enemy you can see, or the one that lurks unseen, waiting in the dark? Thank you for joining me on this journey into one of history's darkest nights. If you find these untold stories of the past as fascinating as I do, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell. There are so many more incredible tales waiting to be discovered. Until next time, stay curious.